Hey everybody, Scott Tutwiler here, and today I thought I would talk about problems with portraiture. My previous video was looking at things with landscapes that we spotted in the recent International Print Competition regionals, and I thought I would go ahead and look at some of the problems with portraiture. Now these can occur at all levels, not just for beginners, but sometimes you kind of don't see the forest for the trees and mix up what you're doing and maybe miss something simple. But these are things that you should not do in print competitions and probably not in portraits in general. But again, like most things, are they hard and fast rules? No, not really. For print competition, I would consider them hard and fast rules. But in your client work and daily projects, you could probably look at some of these as more like heavy suggestions. The first one is the nose breaking the cheek line. So you see we have a little bit of the tip of the nose past the edge of the cheek. This is considered a no-no. Don't do that. In a print competition, this will cost you a good 20 points, and it can also make the nose look longer. Now, in this situation, it's barely past the nose, but I have another example here where you can see that it is significantly past. This is something you just don't want to do because it creates kind of a Pinocchio effect on the nose and makes someone's nose look larger than it is. So don't do that. Now, this is almost a profile, and that's obviously a shot of the side of the face. Usually a person's looking 90 degrees to the camera, so it's a shot of the side. This is almost a full profile, but it's not a full profile. You can kind of see the back eye, and the nose is passing through the eye. This is another no-no. Don't do this. In fact, I'd say don't do this even if it's not print competition. This is just not a good look for the eye and the nose. You have that bit of a Pinocchio thing going on. It's okay, I think, to see the lashes on the far side, but to go through the center of the eyeball like that, I really don't think that's a positive. Now let's talk a bit about lighting in portraiture. This is a problem I see fairly often. I have one more shot of this one here. So I have the modifier right here, and I kind of left it in the shot. And these are just what I want to call it, zoomed in versions of much larger photos that I just kind of want to show you some of the things that were going on during this session. Now this is Angela, and she's an amazing model, and she's very quick. So she will move and she kind of flows through her poses. And sometimes I'll catch a picture and go back later and go, man, I really love it, but I caught her at a bad time, or I should have been a little bit in a different position, or maybe I should have lit the scene differently. So this is no reflection on her. She's an amazing model, one of my favorite models. But these are some great mistakes that I made during that session, and I thought pointing these out would really help you understand what I'm talking about. So in this situation, the modifier here, her shoulder here and her face are evenly lit. And maybe the shoulder is even a little bit brighter because it is a little closer to the modifier. This is also a no-no because the amount of interest here and the amount of interest here are equal as far as lighting goes. So your eye really kind of waffles between the two. This is also a common portrait mistake just in general. The shoulder is closer to the modifier usually, meaning the shoulder is going to be brighter. If you do your inverse square law stuff, you know this is a bad thing. So you might have to add a bit of a flag or black piece of cloth or something over the bottom part of the softbox, or rotate the softbox if it's not a round one. The other image or issues with this image is the kicker, which is the light that exists off the camera left here that's illuminating her arm, is a bit strong. This kind of contrast I think is really nice, but I think it's a bit bright in this situation, and this highlight on the side of her face is also a bit bright, and that creates some issues to me. In a print competition, this would hurt you significantly. So I think this light is probably twice as bright as it needed to be in this situation. It also kind of hits the tip of her nose a little bit. Now, I don't mind that. I think it adds a little bit of interest, but again, this is too bright. So this light should have been turned down. But when the light hits the cheek and hits the nose here, it's going to cost you a few points. And it's also raking the side of her cheek here, which makes skin retouching much more difficult. So in general, this is bad. Now, the image I showed right before that one is my solution to that, aside from turning the kicker down, which I should have done, is to just simply move her nose to the side a little bit. And now we don't have the kicker hitting the side. We get a nice little highlight on the jaw here, which is great. And we don't have the nose hitting the light. Now, the other benefit of this one is that we get the catch light in both eyes, which is another requirement. If you're going to be shooting portraiture, you want to see that light in both eyes. In the previous image, we didn't have that. We had just a little bit of one here, because it was behind me, it was my fill light to get rid of some of the deeper shadows. Now, I don't have an example of that, but watch the amount of contrast you have in images when you shoot. If you have one side of the face is pretty dark and the other side is pretty light, that could cost you some points just because it's a bit too contrasty, especially for a situation like a bride, for example. No bride wants that lighting. You want a little bit more light in the shadows. Also, they don't have, again, more, I don't say examples of this, but her hair is completely separate from the background. It's lit and the background is not lit in this area. This is called figure to ground, meaning we can completely see where her hair stops and where the background begins. And a lot of print competition pieces we saw, you have a brunette in front of a black or dark brown background, and her hair kind of faded off into the background, and you couldn't tell where her hair stopped and the background started. That is a significant issue, and I wish I had a shot of that, but I almost always use a kicker or somehow light the background. So if you're not going to light the other side of the model to help differentiate the edge of the hair, at least add a little bit of something to the background so that you can plainly see where the figure exists in front of the ground. Okay, so let's move on here. Now, this one is a kind of a more complicated one. One of those that could easily skip, and it's called abjective pose, and that is that we need to see the limbs of the body. Now, if this was a full body, we'd expect to see 4 limbs or 2 feet and 2 hands, but her back arm is missing. It's behind her. That will cost you in a print competition, and it may seem like a little thing, like, wow, why would anyone care? But it is one of those things that will cost you points. You want to see the other arm. So in some way, her arm should be present or at least hinted at that it is there. In this case, it is completely gone. That is bad. Let's move on to this one. This is a really good example of posing the hand that creates an issue. We don't typically want to see the back of the hand in poses. We want to see the knife edge of the hand or the thumb side of the hand, but we don't ever want to see the back. And I'd say the palm side is also considered a bad one. But depending on where the hand is, that you could probably get away with. But the back of the hand is a really tough one. And the reason they don't want to do that is because the back of the hand usually has a lot of structure, veins and bones, and it's not real attractive. And because of that micro contrast, your eye tends to go toward it versus the face. So in general, avoid backs of hands. Now, Angela has a beautiful hand, so it's not as much of a downside here as it would be for someone else. But I just want to point that out. That's one that will cost you points. This is one I see a lot. Now she's posing, she's moving through poses here, and I just happen to snap this one in the middle, and her armpit is toward the key light, and you don't want to do that. You can raise the other arm if you needed to somehow put a hand in the air. This armpit toward the key light is something to watch out for. To fix that pose, obviously, you just have her drop her arm. Just putting her arm down can create a beautiful image, but now we don't have to deal with retouching an armpit. And let's just face it, the armpit is something that it's got a lot of skin to it, and it's going to be larger than the face is as far as total amount of skin on the page. So don't have the armpit toward the key light. You can have an armpit toward the shadow light if you need to, or rotate the body away from the camera if you feel for some reason that the arm has to be up above the head. I'm not a fan of people putting their hands near their faces. That's obviously just an artistic decision. So I don't run into that situation very often where we have an armpit that's open, but it can definitely happen. So I love this image of Angela, and you can see that it is blurry. This is mind-blowing to me, but I want to say that a good 25% of the images that I saw come through were blurry, and someone tried to fix it by sharpening the hell out of the image and masking it just around the eyes, thinking no one is going to know that. But it is really dead obvious to print comp judges. So don't post or try and win with blurry images. You have to hit the eyes with the focus. If there's a hair in front of the eye and you hit the eye, you got to know that right away. Chimp on the back of your camera, cheat and look at it. Make sure that your shots are in focus and that you're getting the eyes in focus. Hitting that cheek doesn't count. It doesn't count as sharp if you miss the eyeball. So make sure you do that. I want to show this. She has a beautiful face, and this has an almost painterly feel to it. In fact, I may take the rest of this image and like it enough that I may decide to make a painting out of it, in which case the sharpness of the original image doesn't matter. But if you're going to enter a photography composition, you have to make sure that you hit the focus on the eyes. It's a similar, this is the larger version of that same image. I just love this, but it's not in focus. Now, a small point here is that her nose is looking kind of toward me and her eyeballs are a bit away. In general, we say where the nose points, the eye should point. And that's just a dumb little beginner guideline. Of course, you can break it once you get it. The issue can be created, though, where the colored part of the eye, the iris, is farther away than you would like it, and you end up with a lot of eye white facing toward the camera. And that is not desirable. We want to see the colors of people's eyes. Even if we say, hey, I want her to be looking off camera and her nose should follow her eyes, maybe I'll have her cheat her eyeballs this way just a little bit so that I can cover up a bit of that white. So this image, obviously, I talked about is not in focus. So having double check that, now I have more eye contact. Maybe I didn't want eye contact directly, but that's what I got in this one. I think I like the other image better, but again, it's blurry, so it is what it is. Now, this is a beautiful picture, and I'm very happy with it. But you know now that I'm going to have to make the decision of I'm either going to paint that other image or no one's ever going to see it. It's not going to get retouched because it's just not in focus, and I can't fix that by sharpening the crap out of it and trying to win that way. That's not going to happen. All right, so here's, this is a really good example of what I was talking about before, where her eyes could have been cheated toward me just a little bit so that I see more of the color and not as much white. Plus, the way the catchlight is kind of over the pupil of the eye, I don't get to see the eyes as clearly as I would like, so I would cheat the eyeballs this way a bit. This hand is showing the palm forward. This is not considered good, although I don't really know. I don't know too many judges who will nail you hard on that one, but it is one of those things that you should avoid doing. Just rotating the hand a little bit would be better. For instance, this one is showing the knife edge of the hand toward the camera. This is much better, but this image also suffers from the fact that this hand is closer to the key light than her face, which means the hand is brighter. And now her hand is creating a visual distraction that is almost half the size of her face. If she would have had her palm or the flat of her hand toward me, it would be very bright and almost the size of her face. So this is creating a distraction because it is overly bright. So I'm going to have to go in if I want to keep this image and burn this down so that it doesn't look as bright as it is. So a couple things with this image that make it something I would not enter in a print competition. And the last image, a couple more things. This one, obviously the nose is not breaking the cheek line, but we are passing through the eyeball again. So this is a bit too close for comfort. I would want to back that just a little bit, like I did in this image, for example. So just pulling that nose away just a little bit just makes a better picture. Try and get back to the image I was at. I got smart there. Okay. Now, the other problem here is that her nose and her far cheek are the same color. And this can happen quite often depending on your key light position and the position of the nose. So adding a black card or something that can reflect on her nose, you can actually use black as a reflector, can add a bit of contrast to the image and help differentiate her nose from her cheek. That would help this image look better. Plus, again, crossing through the eye here. Let's talk about neck wrinkles a bit. This is something that's going to happen because it's human anatomy, and that's what happens to the neck when you turn in your shoulders in this position. If you tilt the top of the head away just a little bit, then this will lengthen out, and you can lose some of these wrinkles. I don't think anybody would really pound on you for having these here because it is going to happen. It is part of human anatomy, but it is avoidable by tipping the head away from the camera, the top of the head away from the camera. You could also attempt to edit them out, but that might be a pretty advanced thing, especially if you have hairs in front of that area. That might be work. I'm also not a fan here of the kicker on her back. I think this is a little bit distracting. Again, about twice as bright as it really should be. So this image to me isn't one that I was going to enter any sort of print competition. Also be aware of flyaway hairs for print comps. It's not that you want to make it look like she's got a helmet for hair, but you should be taking care of these really obvious flyaways. And then make sure you use that same solar technique I talked about in my other video on landscapes to spot some of these that may not be obvious to your eye right away, because they will show up. The backgrounds in images that tend to be kind of the same color might get banding, so adding a texture there or a painterly texture or something along that lines to make the image more interesting can also help you. Let me look at the last one here. You kind of saw this one already. So this is just a little bit more of the type of lighting that I like. So I'm on the broad side of a split light here. It might even be a Rembrandt, meaning that the light is passing across the bridge of her nose and getting into the eye here and her cheek, but it's a close call. But I love the kicker here on the side of the lips. I think this is really nice. Again, that's personal preference. That looks really nice, a good strong jaw. However, this area is pretty blown out. It's very bright. So I would have to make sure that the judges can see that I did not lose data there and I didn't screw up. You know, I can look at my monitor and say, wow, that's a great shot. It's bright, but I can still see detail. That doesn't mean that the day the judging happens that someone might go, wow, that is really close. Looks like they didn't have good control over their highlights. I'm going to go ahead and dock them 20 or 25 points. So just make sure that you're not underexposed, but then you have a little bit of wiggle room. In general, it's said in the zone system type of light metering that human Caucasian skin should be about one stop over 18% gray. And that's kind of what I aim for in the cheek area of an image. So I have a little bit brighter and a little bit darker areas, but in general, I want her cheek to be about one stop over 18% gray. So anyway, that's a bunch of tips on portrait photography that I kind of use as a guideline for when I'm going to enter into print competitions and how I kind of treat portraits in general for clients. You know, these are really common mistakes that I see a lot of people make, from not getting it in focus to not knowing how to use a kicker or having it spill across parts of the face. So I hope these were helpful tips, and leave me some comments below and let me know what you think. And if you'd like to see another video on other things, let me know what you'd like. And if you liked the video and you found it helpful, please take a moment and click the like button. It's very rare that people do that, and it really helps this video be seen. So thank you much, and I'll catch you next time.